Okay viewers, well I've got a bit of a plan here. I'm going to call this a Redneck light bulb. Basically I'll put a vacuum nozzle, tap that in, got a nice perfectly good seal there. That'll seal against the bottom with a rubber O-ring, and that'll form a complete seal. Nozzle will go on there, pull the vacuum and that'll hold shut, take that off, cap it off, and it should hold the vacuum, because this is usually because it's a food product, it should be a good freshness seal to help trap out oxygen or air getting in. So in theory this should work to help trap a vacuum in this jar. With these electrodes, they'll go in there, put it approximately halfway into the jar, aerolite those in, so some epoxy to seal it up and give a permanent bond. I put power to those and I put it like a I'm going to basically make a homemade light bulb basically with a carbon let's see, for example these grey LEDs use a carbon. The composition of the lead in these pencils is just carbon. When you put power through them in air, they'll light up. If you get enough power through them, they'll go bright white. But the air, the oxygen from the air breaks these LEDs down. They just disintegrate nearly immediately. By pulling a vacuum, you remove the air, and it should last a hell of a lot longer. So I'll make like a little clamp or something like that. These will bend in there so that they form a spring and clamp the lead between these electrodes and hold it in place, and that lead would be my filament. Now those little mechanical pencils you get 0.5mm, 0.7mm and 0.9mm sizes. I'm going to begin with 0.5mm. The thinner the lead, the less current it's going to consume, so you could say it would be a less wattage light bulb. Then I'll just gradually change the filament for bigger and thicker lead. And obviously it's going to use more power, so I'm going to use a variac and ballast it on my 10 amp heater. Just do some experiments, see how bright it goes like that, and if that doesn't go quite as planned, I'll try this 100 amps to try and get as much light out of it as I can. So yeah, it's worth trying. Otherwise I wanted to know how well it would work. I've seen it done before, and the amount of light you can get out of one of these is just quite amazing for something that's homemade from scratch. So I start by drilling in 2 holes, put the valve in, aerolite those, let that set hard for a couple of days, and come back and we'll make the little connections to hold our lead filament. Take that label off because that's obviously going to block all the light. I won't see what's happening, so then start drilling these holes. Okay viewers, that's basically what you're going to do. I'll epoxy those in. Connections, electrical connections will go there. And what I've done here, I've flattened the ends of these the copper out with a hammer, so it forms a spade, and gently countersunk with a pin punch a hole. A lead will sit in that countersink, and they'll spring close and hold the lead in place. So yeah, that's pretty easy to that should work quite well actually. Easy to make. Instead of using complicated clips and crimping it onto the lead will break, so here's the best way to do it. All I gotta do now is just completely seal that with epoxy and let it sit for a couple of days. Okay viewers, I left this for well over 24 hours. The aerolite's finally cured. Now I did do a quick test fire on this before, and it had air leaks, so this is yesterday. I put, after I tested it, put some silicone around that valve and around the electrodes here to try and stop any Earth's atmosphere or air from getting back in. I did do a light crank up and it did go quite brightly. This experiment has been done by other YouTubers before, but taking the air out completely might make it last a little bit longer. I want to know just how much longer it can last. You don't need to put a full 240 volts to it, so probably need 20 or 30 volts max. That with a ballast of course. The main thing is the heat. These electrodes here got quite hot. So we'll pump it down and give it a test. Viewers, moment of truth. Start turning the power up. Variaction 0, power on. Whoa, that's 30 volts. It's pretty impressive. Filament's starting to fail there. There we go, it popped. But there you go, the heat broke down that graphite lead. That probably pulled about, I reckon, 5 amps max. Unplug, safety first. I'm going to try another experiment. Just proving a little something here. If a speaker needs to vibrate and move air waves to create sound, so the sound waves can travel and get to your ears by air pressure, what would happen if I pumped the air out of the environment that the speaker's in? Will I get sound, or will the cone vibrate so much it's going to bottom out because there's no pressure for the air to restrict it, or yeah, keep it in place? We may get vibrations from the jar. That's probably the only thing I'm going to hear from the jar to the table that it's sitting on. That's probably the only thing we're going to hear sound wise. So no vacuum, let's see what it sounds like. With Crazy Johns. Nothing special. Dude, I disconnect this channel here though, because balance on all the way doesn't necessarily turn the other channel all the way off. So we'll disconnect this just so we're not ruining the myth. There it is. Other channel is disconnected. No sound. Now let's turn this channel on. Power on.
We have been given instructions to reduce all stock levels. To do this, we have made the decision to sell many lines at drastically reduced.
Well, we can still hear the sound waves being carried in that from that jar, but it does appear that the cone's moving more excessively because there's no resistance of air to push.
Dishwashers, vacuum cleaners, and cooking appliances at clearance prices. This unique buying opportunity must end this week.
Yeah.
Only at Mildura Retrovision, the local guys.
Yeah, and the speaker wouldn't normally bass that much without with air normally.
There's claims a Victorian man charged with the shooting of another man at the weekend was already banned.
There you go. It's a speaker under a vacuum. Not quite what I was expecting, but either way, very interesting today. So thanks for watching.